about later, but if you want more information, let us know. And we started brainstorming. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Teri is she's really known for creating these handcrafted events with a lot of little touches that make you feel very special. And so in this virtual setting, you know, she's been brainstorming ways to continue to make people feel cared for, continue to make people feel really connected. And we were just coming up with so many ideas, but who am I kidding? Most of the ideas were Teri's. And so we said, let's do a webinar out of this, because she's been attending virtual meetings. I've been attending virtual meetings. We're helping our clients with their virtual meetings. And so there's just a lot of learning going on. There's going to continue to be lots of learning. So we're going to share with you some of the things that we know. But here's what we do know. We do know that it is not just about the educational programming that you're offering via Zoom, right? So just this little trivia game that we played with you just now. I had a lot of fun. I hope you had a lot of fun. And now you're ready for some good content. And so let's roll. Teri? All right, just a couple of housekeeping things. I don't know if we recorded the trivia. I hope not. I think we're just recording the webinar. So we'll send you a copy of the slides and the recording. We're muting everybody. So if you've got any kind of problems, you can call the main line. We'll help you out. You can also, if you get into the Zoom and you've got problems, you can, send something in the chat. If you've got comments, if you've got questions, we actually have a couple of people who are monitoring the chat here on Zoom. And if we do have folks on YouTube, they'll be monitoring. So we'll respond as they come in. Certainly give us some love on social, and we'll provide you with our contact information so that you can be in touch with us after the webinar. So some of you know Matrix Group. Thank you so much for those of you who are our clients. We're a digital agency based in Arlington, Virginia, although today I'll tell you that my staff are everywhere and I have no idea where they are these days, but we're a digital agency. And we work with associations and nonprofits to really help them solve these problems, increase membership or reverse decline, retain their members, reach new audiences with a clear brand. It might be that you're reaching out to Capitol Hill or to the media or to, because you're for the first time going B2C. And then often organizations come to us because they've got back office systems that really need to be tied together. They need maybe a custom application to really increase their productivity. So here are our services. I won't go into them, but it always starts with I always say it starts with why. What are you trying to achieve? Who are you trying to reach? Why does it matter? And what are the tools that we need so that you can be successful? You all will probably be interested in the fact that we do have a virtual meeting platform called Bespeak. Teri is going to be using it for Non-Dudes-a-Palooza, like I said. But if you're looking for a virtual meeting solution, if you're thinking about a redesign, if you're thinking about how do I transform my organization to become much more digitally savvy, we hope that you'll give us a call. So again, this isn't a webinar about our product, but here are some of the things that our product does: live and recorded sessions, attendee search, exhibitor search, a web conferencing platform to facilitate private meetings, maybe for your meetings of your committees or between associates, attendees, and exhibitors. So these are some of the things that the platform does, and we hope that you'll give us a shout if you need some more information or you're looking for a solution. And I'm being quick because we got so much content to cover. Teri.
We do, and I'll be quick too. I'm Teri Carden. I'm one of the co-founders of 100Reviews. We can see reviews everywhere on restaurants and places we want to visit for vacation, but our professionals don't have a place to give and receive reviews and read reviews on what's happening in the business marketplace. And as Scott Cook says, a brand is no longer what we tell the consumer it is, it's what consumers tell each other it is. And I think, Joanna, you're controlling the slides, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. So what is 100Reviews? It's a platform that allows any organization to spin up their own review site so that their members can give reviews and read reviews on the products and services that they're using at work. You might also know me as kind of wearing the hat for Review My AMS.
Or AMS Best.
Or AMS Best, and now Non-Dudes-a-Palooza. 100Reviews actually is a non-dues revenue generator for associations. Joanna, if you want to hit the next slide, you can see Review My AMS there. We are, I guess I am essentially the largest client on the 100Reviews platform. But we have gladly welcomed NGCOA, the National Golf Course Owners Association, VHMA, which is doing a kick-butt job at generating non-dues revenue for their association, Ohio Credit Union League, Risk Management Association. Many of those are flagship clients of 100 Reviews. And so if you're interested in learning more about 100 Reviews or Non-Dues-a-Palooza, or AMS Fest, or Review My AMS, or any of the other things that I have an identity crisis over, feel free to reach out to me. But today, I am super excited to talk with you specifically about how to wow your virtual attendees. And like Joanna said at the top, basically how this came about is I ran an event for a few years called AMS Fest. We did all kinds of really cool things for that in-person event. And now this year, as I'm creating a new event, Non-Dues-a-Palooza, which was supposed to be held in the beautiful Bell Tower downtown Nashville, that got foiled, right? And kind of one of the reputations that goes before me as an event coordinator or a planner, if you will, is that you've got to bring the wow, bring people an experience that they won't ever forget and that they'll want to come back for more. And all of these virtual events that I'm going to and that you guys are also a part of have just been like, oh, the same thing over and over again. And it's they're just the same thing and it's boring. And it's like, Joanna and I got together and I was asking her questions about how can I really wow a virtual audience? And so I'm not going to insult your intelligence and go through this entire list of what we're going to go over today, but I wanted to just give you an idea of the landscape or the lay of the land of how we got to even having this conversation today. Joanna is speaking from having talked with her clients and seeing her clients put some of these ideas into action. Me personally, as running Non-Dues-a-Palooza and having it go to a full-fledged virtual event this year, some of the ideas that I'm managing with the Non-Dues-a-Palooza audience, and then some ideas that actually an entire network of people outside of my industry, of our industry, helped brainstorm, which is a really cool session on how we can bring life and energy and an experience to the virtual setting.
So, we want to talk about in-person versus virtual. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. And we actually debated whether or not to even talk about in-person versus virtual. I said to Teri, Teri, is this even still a discussion? And she said, yes, Joanna. She said, I have acquaintances, I have friends who are thinking, when this is all over, we're just going to go back to the way things were. And both Teri and I think that we're not really sure what that looks like. We don't know if and when that will actually ever happen. And in fact, I had a call this afternoon. I attended a call with Teri. She was talking with the sponsors from Non-Dues-a-Palooza. And the question was, when do we think people will start to feel safe to actually even go to conferences? And I think that the thinking was the middle of next year, maybe late next year, where if we have a chance of going back to normal, that's really when it will happen. So Teri, in person.
So this is where I hang my hat. This is where I'm really proud of the ideas that I brought to the table. I brought artists into the group. We had beer and wine at lunch. I had a speakeasy one year at my event. And so the in-person, you really get a lot of that human energy, the hugs, the clapping, just the physicality of having humans there. The shaking of hands or elbow bumping, I guess anymore would be what it would be. But there is so many pros to the in-person events, like exercise, even like getting to walk around the city or walk around the conference room. Maybe getting close to deals, right? Like closing deals, talking to speakers afterwards, maybe even like mini chats that you have, like when you're in transportation or in between sessions or whatever. But there are also cons to some of these meetings too. So travel can be expensive, or getting time out of the office. Maybe if somebody's invested in going to a city or going to an event and then they're like, oh crap, this is not what I thought it was going to be, and then they can't really get out of it. They're sort of stuck out of the office for the next few days. The venue cost for the meeting planner skyrockets through the roof. ultimately we can't control the weather or what's happening in these cities, right?
Yeah,
So there
Teri,
are some
it's
constant.
funny. I'm sorry. I have a client. I was attending a conference for him one time, and I said, hey, a really nice conference. And he said, Joanna, at the end of the day, if we have good weather, people will tell me it was a great meeting.
Oh,
And I said,
wow.
all right.
Wow, that's crazy. Yeah,
I
so
know it
much is
is really,
dependent on that. And I'm
yeah,
not gonna lie, when I was thinking about the non-Palooza days for 2021, weather was at the top of the list. So in
sure.
July,
Because, part of an in-person meeting is the other stuff happening around the meeting, right? It's the walking
mhm,
tour, it's the bike ride, it's the going out to dinner and all of those things.
absolutely,
Well, for those of you
absolutely.
who need any kind of rationale for holding your meetings virtually, here's a list that we came up with. It's usually not as expensive, but please don't think that it's free, because you've got to produce this meeting. And if you're going to charge people money, they're going to expect there's time and energy and effort and care that goes into producing the event, right? So that's how we feel about it. Certainly a pro is there's no travel involved, less time out of the office. You can wear comfy clothes. You have no idea if I'm wearing sweats, underneath, below this silk shirt that I'm wearing. I mean, some other things are that it's intentional networking, right? You can, instead of bumping into somebody, you can be intentional about the folks that you're interacting with at a virtual meeting. You can seek out people, and hopefully, if the platform allows it, really kind of, engage with people. You can have asynchronous education. So a friend of mine runs a nursing association, and what they did was they said, we're going to have the meeting for 2 weeks, and instead of being able to get 13 CEs, you'll have a maximum of 35 CEs, because you'll be able to attend the courses asynchronously and get all the credit. So that represented so much value, for her members. And then finally, what we're hearing is that virtual meetings really are making these events and these opportunities more accessible to people with financial or physical disabilities. So folks maybe who can't travel, folks with maybe conditions that don't allow them to travel. Think of the person like my sister, for example, is not really able to be outside because of her compromised immune system, can't really be in large crowds. Cons, no hugs. I'm a big hugger, if you know me. You don't have the serendipitous, happenstance things, the person you meet in the hallway sitting next to you. Social media may take a hit unless worked in purposely. And this is interesting. Teri and I had a discussion about this, because she said, oh, that's a big con, because what happens is in a physical meeting, people are attending the session and then maybe tweeting their love. And I said, wait a minute. I said, I'm not a big fan of that. I said, I was at a conference where I had about 300 people in the room, and they weren't tweeting, and they were all paying attention, and I really liked it as a speaker. So Teri, you had a different opinion on that.
Yeah, and my opinion was from the planner's perspective, right? So if you have somebody sitting there in a general session taking pictures and tweeting out about the session because they don't have a place to chat, like our attendees are chatting over here, they're probably chatting here, they're not tweeting out. So as a planner, I've got somebody using my hashtag, putting out pictures, and essentially helping me promote my event without me ever even asking them to. So if people are engaged in this virtual environment, they're engaged with what's happening. It's kind of like a tunnel vision with what's happening right here on the screen. And they're not thinking about Twitter and other areas. So that was kind of my argument for that.
Yeah. So it was
And we can
interesting.
agree to
Like,
disagree.
yeah, we decided this was a pro and a con. And then certainly, I know as a speaker, for me, I really kind of get energy from the audience. So it's hard for me to gauge, am I connecting with my audience? Sometimes attendees will be reluctant to pay full price. We've heard from some associations where certain segments of the membership have said, no way, I don't want to attend a virtual event. Like, I got to be able to see people shake their hands. And some sponsors are certainly pulling out. But I'll tell you, this afternoon, when Teri and I were on this call, one of the exhibitors, one of the sponsors said, from our perspective as a sponsor, virtual events, we think, provide so much more value to sponsors because of the opportunity, if given, to connect with the attendees, the analytics that they'll have. So they felt like, virtual events were really, very, very good for them. So Teri, we think kind of, at the end of the day, on balance, virtual meetings are good.
Yeah, I mean, right now if it's not virtual meetings, it's no meetings. Okay, let's face it. So we're all here up against a wall going, we have to do a virtual meeting essentially. Why? Because we're leaving money on the table if we don't engage with our constituents that way. We're leaving potential CAE credits on the table. You know, if you're a certifying body or you're part of an organization that supports certifications or credentialing, you need to be providing that education. And if your conference goes away, then you're missing out on the opportunity for your constituents to maintain their credentialing. You're leaving engagement and a memorable experience on the table. It's another touch point that you can have with your members. And, even, like Joanna said earlier, really you're tapping into a completely new marketplace potentially that was never tapped into before. Like I think about people that have loved ones or pets or children at home that can't be left at home. I know people who have disabilities who can't attend events like this. So when you unlock a virtual experience, it creates an entire new audience that you get to tap into as an organization. And I think what we're seeing more and more, we're seeing that associations are realizing this. So one of the really awesome quotes, I did a Non-Dues-a-Palooza May event. It was my first virtual event. And I'm telling you, there wasn't a whole lot of bells and whistles to it. We had from like the end of March to May to pull this thing off. But one of the attendees gave me a piece of feedback. And I thought it was really pertinent to kind of kick this conversation off as we start talking about building hype and why it's important that we have virtual events. He said, I enjoyed the post-conference conversation just as much. You guys see me looking over here, my iPad is here, and these are my notes. So forgive me if you see me looking off screen here, but okay, back to what he said. I enjoyed the post-conference conversations just as much, if not more. I'm extremely introverted, he says. So if I had gone to a happy hour in person, I would have probably sunk into a dark corner somewhere and tried to stay invisible. Virtually, however, I really enjoyed the conversation. So let that be a testimony to an entire audience of people that might not be able to get tapped into the in-person events. I'll leave you guys with that. That's actually one of the few times I've been able to share that quote without crying. So,
I mean, it's so moving, Teri. I mean, that person would have gone to the conference and benefited from it, but felt like, he was able to really engage and interact with folks, maybe because he's shy, whatever the reason.
Yeah,
so,
sure. And lots of people
amazing.
deal with this anxiety in groups or, fear of traveling. I mean, there are a million reasons really. So
Teri, pre-conference hype. We got to keep moving. I'm going to keep us on track. So we're going to talk about kind of different aspects of having a meeting. And one of the things that we think you can do is even before the conference, really hype the conference, get people engaged so that you can really, in essence, like start the conference, right? So, some of the ideas are, so let's think about this. With a physical meeting, you're going to meet for 3 days, July 16th, 17th, and 18th, and people fly in the day before. And, they meet for 3 days and they're in the same venue. Well, virtually, the question is, do you have to limit yourself to that model? Do you have to limit? Why not extend the meeting? Why not open it up early? So maybe you still have the educational programming on the 3 days, but why not start the conference early? So Teri's doing something really interesting with Non-Dues-a-Palooza. She's giving people 10 minutes to do a case study. Well, what she realized is by the time you're done with the 2-minute introduction of who you are, you've got 8 minutes left. So the intros are going to be in the platform ahead of time so that the 10 minutes during the conference can really be devoted to the content. I'll give you another example. So at the ASAE Tech Conference last year, I did a session with two CEOs on the book, The Inevitable by Kevin Kelly, which I absolutely love. And I thought, man, it would have been awesome to encourage people to read the book ahead of time and really, because then people would have gotten so much more out of the presentation. So why not start the conference early with maybe some educational content, some intros, some pre-learning, maybe let them look at the schedule, let them start kind of creating their schedule and let them start interacting with folks so that by the time the 3 days of programming are really happening, they're ready basically, right? So, and Teri, you've got some ideas for really kind of using email to engage the attendees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So one of the ideas around email, which will pop up later, is I have a question that goes out every single Friday. Another idea, we'll hit on some of these email communications in the communications portion of, of the slides. But one of the most fun ideas that has been brainstormed that I'm super excited to implement for Non-Doozapalooza is this goodie box. Okay. And so it may or may not be related to happy hour. Okay. Don't tell on me. But I asked all of the registrants last 2 weeks ago, I said, where is your current place of business? And would you be willing for me to send you a goodie bag in advance to the virtual bazaar, which is happening in August? And all but I think 3 people said, yes, absolutely, send me a surprise goodie bag. And so what is in the goodie bag, you might ask? Perhaps their favorite beverage, wink, wink. Okay, of course, I asked them what their favorite beverage was. Water was one of the options. Water is one of the options. But there also will be other secrets that will be in this box that will be unlocked throughout the event itself. And we'll talk about some of those ideas later. But I am going to use a product called, for those of you that haven't heard of, Sticker Mule. They have poly bags and they also have this packaging tape. They have stickers. They have all kinds of fun stuff to help you customize or configure your, customize your packaging. So I'm going to probably order some Non-Doozapalooza tape to be wrapped around my secret special box that will only be allowed to be opened, by the way, once the virtual attendees come to Non-Doozapalooza Virtual Bazaar. There will be a time when we all open our box together. And so that also is going to entice and help get people actually sitting in the room to attend the virtual bazaar. I think the next slide here is actually an example of the poly mailers. So if you have something that's not breakable or something that might not bend or something along those lines, you could also customize the poly mailers. And you can see here, they're super reasonably priced. Unless you have to order 600,000 or something. And in that case, I contact Sticker Mule and they'll probably cut you a deal.
Yeah, so what's neat about that is, first of all, people always love the tchotchkes and the trade show, right? But I think it adds to the event of, hey, I'm getting something special. And if Teri's going to do something where people are going to open their boxes at the same time or pull something out of the box. And I think it also adds to the feeling of, I'm in an event at a certain time and place with other people who want to be here with me. That's the feeling that you get at a conference. If everyone is asynchronous, you don't get that as much. So Teri's doing a really nice job there.
Thanks. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about surprising people in a tangible way,
And again, with her usual touches, there's going to be just amazing stuff, in the box. So even the check-in can be a wow experience. So let me just say this. If you're planning a virtual meeting, don't just think about the platform, think about the whole journey of how you're going to get from registration to the platform. And I'll tell you, I've been to a couple of virtual meetings recently where I know everyone's really trying to make these things smooth, but there was one meeting where I had to register. And then when I got to the page, I had to re-register because it was a completely different platform that wasn't integrated. And then the actual event was being done through Facebook Live. So I had to go to Facebook. I had to be let into the Facebook private meeting by providing my email. I had to be let in, and then I had to go back into the page, and then I had to scroll down to see where the actual session was happening. So the very first day, I didn't think I was going to have to do that. I missed the first 10 minutes. So I felt like the journey was disjointed. So think about, how do you create, if not a wow, then at least kind of a smooth experience so people don't feel lost when they're going into your platform. So that's the first thing that I would say. But the second thing is why not make entry fun, right? So one of the things that we've been brainstorming with Teri is we're, looking at these different platforms, and certainly in designing ours, there's this concept of a meeting. And my creative director said, why would you want to be in a kind of cold, boring convention center? Why can't we have the meeting on a spaceship? So I said to Teri, I said, well, what about when you click, enter the meeting, can we have something fun happen? And so one of the things that we're going to try and do for Non-Do-za-Palooza is when you click go to meeting, it's going to say something great is about to happen, and you can choose your own adventure. You can like walk through a sunflower field, or you can go through hyperspace, or you can, enter a TARDIS. There's going to be some cool like, video effect, and then you'll enter the meeting. So just something to make you feel like I've just been transported somewhere else.
And you can choose your own adventure every time you come in.
Exactly.
So if you want to have a different adventure next time you log into the portal to see the virtual bazaar, it's bizarre. It's got the word bizarre in it, right? It has to be fun. You have to get there a fun way. And these are limitations that you have for in-person events, right? Scott made a point a second ago, like a lot of these are great ideas, but you could also do these for in-person events, right? Like you could ship a goodie box for an in-person event. Of course you can. Like our ideas are being pushed now to create really wholesome experiences, especially when it comes to those tangible things. But think about the fun that you can do with digital too, like what Joanna is saying. And I'm excited to see what adventures we'll be able to take as we get into the virtual bazaar portal.
And think about when you go into the event. So when you go into the hotel in a physical meeting, when you get to the hotel, when you get to the convention center, there's swirl going on, right? And there's like signage, and there's the person saying this is what's happening now. So how do we provide people with through the microsite that you're sending them to, how do we provide them with the visual clues about where they need to be? And how do we kind of, again, welcome them into the event? So some of the ideas are, how about a welcome video that says when they first land on the page, it says, hey, welcome to, the 25th annual conference of the, National Association of Guys Named Bob. This year we're doing something different, and here's how it's going to go. And then maybe on that landing page, you've got a rotation of different videos from the meeting. Maybe there's interviews with speakers. Maybe there's interviews with some of your sponsors. Teri has a blooper video, because she's going to be making all these videos from the sessions, and with her sponsor, she's going to do a blooper video. That's going to be in the rotation. What about welcome videos from your leadership? And Teri, you've even got an idea to do a cameo video.
Yeah. So who here has heard of Cameo? Raise your hand or go in the chat and be like, oh yeah, me, I've done it. So to give you a little data dump here, and we can jump to the next slide if you want to, Joanna, just to give them a visual. But Cameo is an app where you can hire famous people to give you special messages. For example, my daughter had her 15th birthday in the middle of all of this mess. I'm not saying the C word or C acronym, whatever, to give you exact there, but in the middle of all this mess. And so I hired, she and I, our favorite thing is Survivor. And so I hired Sandra, the queen of Survivor, to give Sydney a special message. That girl went on for 2.5 minutes just for Sydney's birthday. But you could actually hire these cool comedians, famous athletes, artists, actors and actresses to actually welcome your attendees. So you could hire them.
So how awesome would that be to have Sandra from Survivor to say, hey, welcome to the 25th conference of the National Association of Guys Named Bob. Yep. Man, I'm so excited to be with you guys. And you go out there and rule the world.
Yeah, and it's pretty reasonably priced. So to give you an example, I was able to hire Sandra to give a 2-minute, I didn't even give her the time, but she just this message, give her a little bit of description about who she's talking to and why. And it was $45. I mean, so come on, you could probably get some famous comedian on there for like $250 to say hello to your attendees. And you could get 5 of them even. You could get them to make an introduction to all of your sessions, or introducing a speaker. Like how cool would that be to have a cameo appearance by somebody famous? So you see Gilbert Gottfried, like tons of famous people on there. So if you haven't heard of Cameo, I would say give it a good look. The price point is all over the place. It just depends on the individual. I think this is actually a fundraiser for the arts community. I'm not 100% sure, but you could jump on Cameo and you can find out a little bit more. So I thought that's a fun idea. And maybe my Non-Do-za-Palooza virtual bazaar people will see somebody fun introducing them. But don't tell everybody else.
So, our next idea is, how about some fun icebreakers? And again, so often we go to these conferences for the educational content, but what really becomes transformational is the connections that we make with the folks, right? The person that you sat with at lunch, who now you're going to stay in touch with, the person that you met on the expo hall. So how can we also create some of those connections? So at the start of this webinar, we asked you all if you could to join us 15 minutes ahead of time, and we played a fun trivia game. And that did a couple of things. It kind of broke the ice. It got people in the mode of, hey, we're here for this event, but it was just fun, right? So you can do this throughout the conference. You can open your conference with it. You can do it in the middle of the day. You can do it before your general session. And I think, Teri, you've got an interesting insight into this. You think people have to get this out of the way before they're in the mindset of, I'm ready to learn.
Yeah, so this is speaking from experience. When I did my May virtual event, okay, there was 3 high-profile association execs speaking super intelligently to strategy around non-dues revenue, okay? That's what non-dues-a-palooza is all about. It's all about associations generating non-dues revenue. And so, I had this 5-minute window that people could check in basically before the event officially started, before we hit play on the recording. And all of this chat was going wild as the content was getting launched. And people were just introducing themselves, and people were chit-chatting just like we were alongside the trivia stuff. But people were like having this superficial conversation 15 minutes into the content being generated. And it was like, wow, it's super distracting. Even some people here have even said the chat is just a little bit distracting because it's kind of, it can be off topic, right? And so chat is not for everybody. And sometimes chat can enhance the conversation. But if you get all of that superficial stuff out of the way ahead of time, it gives people the headspace and the mind frame to then, okay, switch gears, just like you would at an in-person event, right? You go in, you have coffee, you have the experience of saying hello to people, picking a seat, listening to the music, catching the vibe, and then sitting, and then you're ready to consume. And so you have to give people that white space, if you will, to say hello and get all the superficial stuff out of the way. Some fun ways to do that, you could get people to like engage and get involved in very specific ways, like ask them, like play trivia or the close-up photos, or like go ahead and get people to say hello in different languages and see how many languages you can come up with. Another idea that takes a little bit more work would be to ask people, which I plan on doing this. So this is all like the inside baseball stuff that people that are attending the virtual bazaar are going to get insight to, but I'm going to ask them to tell me a fun fact about themselves. So the registrants will get a question from me on a Friday, just like they always do. And I'll be like, tell me a fun fact about yourself. And then as we're getting kicked off with Non-Dues-a-Palooza, there'll be a fun fact and be like, who in the room, was once an Olympian, or whatever it is, whatever the fun fact is. And then it will reveal the person.
And Teri has done that at her in-person events, and it was really fun. She would ask the attendees and the exhibitors, and so at the start of each session, she would ask a fun fact. And I thought it was really neat because then it became an icebreaker. So if I knew that, X person was an Olympian, and I'm like, I want to meet this guy, what do I say? Now I've got an opening. Hey, wow, you were an Olympian, just fun stuff. And again, kind of breaks down the, we're so serious and we're all about the educational content. Teri, I had the same experience when I attended a couple of conferences over the past couple of months. So the first 10 minutes, people are like, hey, Joanna from Alexandria, Bob from Tallahassee. I found it distracting. And I felt like, come on, y'all, like there's this really good content here. I just turned off the chat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty common, especially for the way that people like to consume the content, right?
All right, so let's talk about sessions, because obviously that's heart of many conferences. So many people have asked the question: do you go live or do you go pre-recorded? So Teri, was I doing this? I think you were doing.
Yeah, live. You're doing the live, and then I'll do pre-recorded.
Oh, okay. So I'm doing live. Thank you. So obviously, if it's live, there's the human factor, right? Like we're doing this live, right? If I'm stumbling over my words, you know that it's live. Right? It's also really timely. If something happened this morning then we can actually comment on it. If this had been pre-recorded 2-3 weeks ago, then I probably wouldn't have known, for example, that the states are opening up next week, and maybe there is a chance that there's some meetings that are going to happen in person. The sessions also feel really authentic when it's live. And I remember I attended the ASAE MMCC conference, and all the sessions were pre-recorded, and they were excellent sessions. There were a few people who said, oh, wow, it's pre-recorded. Huh, like, they kind of felt like they were cheated a little bit. I think it was also a little bit odd for some folks to feel like, well, here's X person presenting, but that person is also chatting with me live. So it just felt kind of out of sync. Now, the cons are, if it's live, the session could go over under, like this session looks like it's going to go over. Hopefully it won't. Technology is unpredictable. I did a webinar a couple months ago where all of a sudden my co-host, like his internet went poof. And then it took him about 5 minutes to get back into the session. And, I just went right on with the presentation, but those things are going to happen with live. And then I think one thing that happens too with live is if you've got an event with lots and lots of speakers. So for example, if you've got a general session where normally you've got the intro and you've got the hello and you've got the sponsor speech and the chairman's speech and then the video and then the award winner, that's a little bit harder to produce live when there are multiple locations. That's going to be easier to do pre-recorded, even though there's a fair amount of production involved.
Yep. So let's talk about pre-recorded and what the pros are there. So obviously, on the contrary of all of the things that are the pros or the cons for live, are the pros for recorded, right? To add pizzazz, and people are expecting a higher level of production, perhaps for a general session, or if they've paid a lot of money for, for a virtual meeting, they're going to expect a high level of production, right? But what's also going in your favor is that the timeline, right? So sometimes these events, as we know as planners, they're on a very strict timeline. And if you have pre-recorded content, you can trim and cut or add as you need to and make filler so that it makes the timeline go seamlessly. It's not as dependent on technology. There still is some technology issues that could go wrong, but you have a lot more in your favor, a lot less risk going there. And speakers can actually participate alongside the chat if it's a pre-recorded session, like what I had for the virtual event that happened in May. All of these high-profile speakers that I had, their pre-recorded content was going there. Yes, though they said that was super weird that they were listening to themselves, they were actually able to add additional commentary to some of the comments that were being made there. The cons are, like, again, what if Joanna and I had this webinar right here pre-recorded? You wouldn't really be getting that sense of like humanness that we have. You wouldn't be seeing sort of the spirit of our interaction going on as much. I mean, maybe I've
seen it done, and I've seen it done really well. It can be stilted if it's like just Joanna and then just Teri and then no interaction. But if it's live, you can have that interaction.
Yeah. So the other thing is, like, sometimes you're just losing that timeliness. If it's a pre-recorded session from a month ago, the comments that are coming out of that speaker's mouth, unless it's just an evergreen topic, could potentially be insensitive to what's happening in the current industry or the current world situation, or could just be not timely for what's happening in that specific industry. So pre-recorded definitely can have a little bit of its the downfalls there, and it's a lot of work to pre-record. Just to give you a little insight, for the virtual event that I did in May, the speakers went an hour and a half and the content was to be trimmed down to an hour. And so there was a lot of editing that went into trimming those like really big thoughts that were coming by these speakers down to just an hour. So a lot of work goes into that.
Also,
sure.
Like, you could just tell your speakers, right? Like for ACE Annual, I'm speaking, and then like a couple of my coworkers are speaking, and they've got like a time that they're going to be recorded, in the platform, and they're going to record them, and they'll probably do a little bit of production, the start of the slide and the end of, the start of the session and at the end. But if you want something a little bit more produced, where maybe you're like inserting graphics, you're adding music, that's when you really start to get into, you're going to need some time just to do all that. Teri, I'm going to move us along.
Okay,
we have
good
so much
thinking.
to cover.
Because we still haven't got to the juicy parts. We're not in like the fun stuff
We're
yet.
doing juicy, don't worry.
It's
So
juicy,
here's
but
just some
actually the fun
ideas.
is
You
to
know,
come.
so Teri and I think for some of your sessions, it's fun to let people see each other depending on the audience size. Like here, for example, we've got, I actually have no idea how many people are on this webinar. We had like 350 register. Who
There
knows?
are
There could be 5 of you.
240
Okay,
people with us
240. We
right now.
can't all let you be on video, but depending on the size, it's fun to let them be on video. You've got tools that allow you to do breakouts. You use a speaker ready room. So another thing is like maybe you name the session room so that you can say, so that just like in a physical meeting, you'll say, hey, this session is going to be done on Tatooine. For those of you who understand Star Wars, this one is going to be on Kashyyyk. This one is going to be whatever it is. And the other thing that I will say is, regardless of whether you do live or pre-recorded, please provide training to your speakers. I've been to conferences where the speakers, physical conferences where the speakers clearly had amazing content, but they weren't as engaging and their slides weren't interesting. Now you can imagine that online, that's going to be even more deadly. And I think you're going to really disappoint your audience. So make the investment in speaker training.
Mm-hmm.
So
So what are some other fun elements that we can add to sessions? You can add some music, maybe as people are entering the room, like if it's a breakout. Or use video like Joanna mentioned earlier, like to introduce people or to get people in, you can use supporting video content. And what's cool is, you can have chat going on while the presentation is going on. And one of the cool ideas that we have that's happening for Non-Doozapalooza Virtual Bazaar in August is using the BeSpeak platform. There will actually be a hallway chat. So in order to take away some of the chat that might happen that's not related to the content, people can say, okay, yeah, man, this session's meh. And they could actually go into the hallway and have a hallway chat and chat there separately about whatever it is they want to chat about. And then one of my favorite ideas that I have is like when people are engage in a virtual setting like you and I are right now. If you have a piece of paper or pen right here, you might be listening and kind of doodling or taking notes or fumbling with your fidget spinner or whatever you're doing. Maybe in your goodie box, you send them something that they could actually doodle on or play with or color or experiment with while they're listening to these sessions. And because as we know, from when people learn as they're moving their hands or they're doing something, it actually allows for
activating the brain.
Right, process things properly. So one of the ideas that I have for Non-Doozapalooza Virtual Bazaar is to send everybody in their box a puzzle piece. And so it'll be a blank puzzle piece and it will be wrapped, okay? And there will be a certain time during the event when we'll open the envelope. Yes, I'm telling all the secrets here. That's okay. And it'll be a blank puzzle piece and it'll be one blank puzzle piece as a part of a picture to a giant puzzle. And it'll come with a marker or something, or maybe not, I don't know. But it'll also come with a postage prepaid envelope to send it back to me. And so I'm gonna prompt them to color, give a saying, write on something, do whatever they want to do with the puzzle piece. Maybe it's a key takeaway they write on the puzzle piece. And then send that puzzle piece back to me. Well, as those puzzle pieces come back to me, I'm going to take pictures and post those on social media like, oh my gosh, this is a really exciting puzzle piece to get back. And as the puzzle comes together, we create one giant Non-Doozapalooza puzzle. What the heck I'm going to do with the puzzle afterward, I have no idea. But I think it makes a lot of fun to unlock sort of a social element and give people something to do as they're listening to some of the sessions.
Hey, I've got another idea related to the session, and this came from a client. They're going to have educational content and they're going to have a chat. But one of the things that they're going to do is gauge how much interest there is in the topic. And at the end of the day, if there's interest, they're going to have these basically open discussion rooms, either to talk about anything that the attendees want, or they're going to be devoted to the different sessions. So at the end of the day, you can say, wow, that session on leadership, I'm really interested in that. So they'll invite people to go into whatever room that they want, go on video and just have a chat. So then what you're doing is you're in some ways like creating these special interest groups where people can just go and continue the discussion. I know that when I go to conferences, sometimes I'll attend these sessions and they're so great, but I don't know who to talk to about it because I don't know who attended the session. Well, guess what? In a virtual setting, we know who attended the conference and we can actually like, stick you in there.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the part where planners would say that virtual events are probably taking the biggest hit, right? So let's explore how you can not only make, generating or helping people network, not just suck, but make it like really awesome, right? And I know, Joanna, you're going to talk about how your platform specifically can even help with serendipitous connections in this virtual environment.
So I've attended some conferences that didn't have any kind of an attendee search. And what I saw is people would like comment on the sessions and then somebody would try to mention each other, or they'd like put in their LinkedIn, profile URLs because they wanted to connect with folks. So what I say is, why not have an attendee search? As part of the registration, you can ask for permission if they'd like to be included in the attendee search. And you can say, look, we don't have to provide your contact information. Depending on the platform, you could have like a messaging within the platform itself. So I don't feel like I need to make my email address or my phone number available to the world. Now you can, talk to me about GDPR and CCPA compliance. You can do this and still be compliant with those regulations for those of you, that are international organizations or care about that stuff. Another thing is like you can have a recommendation engine. So like in our platform, we can actually push out to you people that we think you should meet based on something in your profile. So it's kind of like someone has curated people that you can meet, and that's actually part of the platform. And then, in other ways, just kind of encourage messaging between folks, and they can do it during the conference. And this is also part of why I think you should let people into your platform early so they can fill out their profiles, put in a photo, put in contact information, give you permission to make them be part of the search, and then start those connections. And Teri, was this, I can't remember, was this me? Oops.
Yep, that's also you too.
Okay, that's all me. So here are just some other ideas for building networks. So, one thing you could do is like create assigned groups for the entire conference or for each day of the conference. So this is an idea from another client where what they do is they organize people into cohorts. And then there's a time during the meeting where like you meet with your cohort. And it could be open time, or it could be you guys are assigned to talk about X topic. And what happens is, and they're small enough that you'll get to know each other. And the idea is that by the end of the conference, you've built up your network because over the course of the 3 days, the 5 days, the whatever, you've gotten to know these folks. You've discussed topics of relevance to your industry or profession, and you've really gotten to know them, and certainly you shared contact information. So what are some other ideas? Like give the groups names, right? So they can say like, I'm team Captain Marvel, right? I'm with the Avengers, and that's my cohort. And we meet every day from 4 to 4:30 to talk about the day. In real life, you could be giving them rooms. Well, why not do it, in a virtual setting? Give them trinkets, make it be part of their goodie bag. And then certainly, again, as part of the registration, you can ask for permission to share contact information, for the group. So there's so many ways that you can really be encouraging this networking, between the attendees.
I have to share an idea around this. As the virtual bazaar has been pulling together and all these ideas from us, like pulling this webinar together, I came up with a new idea totally related to that. So this focus group, or the small group that I'm a part of, gave me this idea to create these small groups within non-Doozapalooza community. So we've got like 150 people. I'm going to point blank ask all of the registrants. That's actually this Friday's question. Do you want to be a part of a small group? It would be like 5 to 10 people, and the small group is specifically around a topic. So in my case, it would be a non-dues revenue topic, right? And they can say yes and then tell me which topic they want to join. And then I'll pack them together. The cool part about all of this is I'm actually going to allow a sponsor to also participate in those small groups. So one sponsor can actually sit in on the conversation not to like be overwhelmingly pointed about what, what they have to say about their product or service. It's not a time and a place for that. It's actually a place to listen to what's happening in the marketplace, and a place for them to hear what the problems and issues are that associations are discussing amongst each other, and to just continue to be there as a support system. So not only are the attendees able to meet with each other around a specific topic and in a small group, but then the sponsor actually is also privy as a benefit to their sponsorship to be able to be a part of this conversation as well. So that was another way that I was bridging the gap from canceling the in-person event to saying, hey, sponsors, like we've got something here for you too, right?
And in the end, people are looking for meaningful ways to connect. And I think the goal is not to replace the event with something that's a poor replica, right? Create some different experiences and you'll create something equally transformative, even if it's in a different format.
Yep.
All right, so what do we do about communications?
Okay, so communications before, during, after, like there's communications flying all over the place, right? And half of the people don't read them, but let's talk about them anyway. Speaking of not reading things, if you send an email and it's like, save the date for this date, people are going to see that email. They're not going to go do anything unless it's like absolutely important to them, and they're not going to go put it on their calendar. So for a smaller event, I have actually, for the Non-Duzapalooza crowd, I have just added them as a calendar invite. So all of the registrants, they just get added to the calendar invite. That gets held, because if anybody here on this call is anything, on this webinar is anything like me, we don't have control over our own calendars. There are lots of people who have control over my calendar as well. And so if we block that time off for them, then they can't override it. Well, they can override it, but it's less likely it will get overwritten. Send out maybe like countdown emails. Like maybe there's a theme, like you can come up with like 10 or 15 themes. So like every other day, or maybe not to totally bombard them, but like in a way that matches the tone or the spirit of your audience. You can send them themed emails, like getting them excited about the event and kind of keeping it top of mind. And like for you, Joanna, just like we would do with a webinar, much like for your events, you're going to want to, remind them, hey, you're going to be here with us today. We're so excited to see you. You want to send it the morning of, an hour before, all that good stuff. And then one of my favorites is these weekly questions. And I know I've mentioned it a couple times already, but I really want to tell you guys about these. I use a product called Prop Fuel. Yes, I'm name dropping there because I can, and that's okay. And Prop Fuel basically allows for me to ping or to get information from or ask a question of the audience of Non-Duzapalooza. And just about every Friday, they're expecting this question from me. A lot of times the question is related specifically to non-dues revenue. I want to know things like, do you expect your non-dues revenue to go down the second half of 2020? What are your predictions for 2021? Or whatever, fill in the blank. And then I give them the answers the next week to the responses from the week before. So they actually have some information from their comrades from the week before. But what is the question at Gretchen saying? It's called Prop Fuel. So every Friday I drip these questions out to them. And essentially it's a communication to them every Friday that they know is coming. And not only is it something that they're just receiving, but they also get something back out of it. They can see for benchmarking, or they can see for other purposes of like what's going on specifically in the Non-Duzapalooza community. But not only that, is I land them on the answer page. And I think it's the next slide, maybe, Joanna, is this answer page, which is held on the Non-Duzapalooza site, gives them responses from the week before. So they can point blank see the responses to the questions that are being asked of the community itself.
What I love about this is Teri's engaging her attendees ahead of the event. It's giving her a sense of like where their minds are. Mm-hmm. And also like, I think we need to be nimble these days with our programming and with our formats. So if you want to ask a question about something related to format, you can, and then pivot quickly. And then let people know, hey, we heard from you, so we're going to pivot. And then this gives your attendees a sense of, wow, they're being really responsive to us. So couple other things, and then yikes, we're running out of time. So I'm going to ask you all in the chat, and I'm we just have so much content. If you'd like us, if you'd allow us to go an extra 10, 15 minutes, Teri, I'm available. You available?
Yes, yes,
Okay. All
I
right.
can talk about this stuff at night.
Okay, yeah, us too. So apologies if you have to drop right at 3 Eastern, then know that this is being recorded. But if you can hang with us for another 10, 15 minutes, I'm sorry, we just have a lot of content. So anyway, let's talk about communications. So another thing that you can do is browser push notifications. So like in our platform, for example, people can sign up to be notified. And what's nice about the browser push notifications is they work just like the notifications on your phone, where if someone subscribes, if they're on a browser, even if they're not on your site, they're going to get a notification. So it's just a nice little reminder that, hey, the general session is starting, and those can be general or they can be customized to the person. So how many times have you registered for a webinar and then you just forgot, right? So I signed up for a conference and I just forgot. It was even on my schedule and I just forgot I got involved in something. Some other ideas, Teri was thinking about doing a short video from leadership with a 20-second personalized video for each attendee. So, wow, that's a lot of work if you've got 450 people, but if you've got 75 people, 100, and you give each board member, 15 videos to do and just say, look, record something. Dear, hey, Andy, it's Joanna, I'm on the board. I just want to say thanks for attending. What a nice kind of high touch thing, right? And then, again, we think that these community things are so important to these conferences that ultimately people come for the people. So why not create these pop-up communities just for the time of the event around special interests, around something, right? So in our platform, for example, we know who's attending these different sessions, so you can create pop-up communities for the folks who want to be talking about safety, who want to be talking about, whatever it is. So.
Okay, so this is a special place in my heart. The what we call exhibitors in many of your cases or sponsors. We can't forget about these guys, y'all. They are usually the core funders of the events that we're producing. But without an exhibit hall, I mean, maybe you might have a virtual exhibit hall, but without a real tangible exhibit hall, like how can we accommodate them? And heck no, it's not just like accommodating them, but like how can we knock their socks off with virtual? Okay. And so I'm just going to go at, we only have one slide on this, but this is a whole separate webinar all by itself. And I would love to even personally share the experiences or even have a couple of sponsors from the non-Jizzapalooza crowd to share with me and you, Joanna, to join in the conversation about sponsorships and how you treat sponsors in a virtual environment. If you want a webinar like that, tell us in the chat, okay? But we're gonna
tell us in the chat because there's a lot here, and I know that people are just kind of stressed about their exhibitors and sponsors. I was on a call with a client, and they said we just don't know that there'll be enough value for the sponsors. And I beg to differ. I'll tell you that I exhibit and I sponsor at multiple events. If you give my company meaningful ways to connect with attendees so that I'm not just shoved in some little corner where no one's looking, but if there's meaningful ways for me to connect with attendees, make my products known, actually participate in discussions and generate leads, you got all my money, right? So at the end of the day, if my goal is really to bring in business and you give me that, I'm going to give you money. So what are some ideas, right? I'm sorry, Teri, were you saying something?
No, I was just going to add, one of my favorite sponsor gurus, Bruce Rothenthal, says, it's true that with virtual, there are more tangible benefits to sponsors over in-person events. So let that sink in for a minute and then fill the gaps with some of these, which can have analytics, which is the very bottom bullet point there, but all tied to them.
Yeah, so, I mean, here's some of the things that you can do. Teri talked about sponsor goodie bags. So I've got a client that's going to do a sponsor track in their sessions, right? Where in their sessions, if you look at the sessions of the day, there's a spot, like you might have a track for leadership, one for safety, one for, IT, one for whatever. There's another track called sponsors, and they have the ability to present. Another client is allowing their sponsors to actually provide on-demand education in the on-demand section of their meeting. And they're really working with those sponsors so that those are really good kind of educational content that then they're going to push out and say, look, our sponsors are providing really good content. We hope that you'll explore them. And in some cases, because clients are kind of extending their virtual conferences, they're either meeting for longer or even making the content available, long after the live sessions are over. The sponsors now have the ability to really kind of showcase even longer. I also say, give them the ability to message attendees directly and tell everybody, look, in the spirit of kind of networking, everybody should have the ability to network. You can always ignore the messages, from the sponsors. Actually have a client that sent a very nice email to all of its attendees saying, hey, we want to thank the sponsors of this conference. They're making it possible to have this conference. Please visit the virtual hall and please book appointments. Now, the other thing I think, hopefully will consider is actually have some kind of an appointment scheduling app within the conference that really allows the attendees and the exhibitors to schedule appointments with each other. And in our case, for example, you can actually have the meetings within the platform so that if Joanna Pineda logs into the meeting, I can see I'm going to attend the general session, here are the sessions I'm interested in, and oh, I'm meeting with somebody over here from Prop Fuel, and I'm meeting with somebody over here from X printing company. All of those things just become part of my meeting experience. So, we've got other ideas. You can insert videos, YouTube style in front of the sessions, whether on demand or live. You can ask your session attendees to give shout outs to your sponsors. You can have certain parts of the conference, sponsored by your exhibitors. So there's so many ways that you can engage them. But I think finally, the last thing that I would say is really treat your exhibitors and sponsors as solutions providers, right? These are folks who really do want to provide solutions to problems that your members have. Give them a chance to do it by having really nice, company profiles, give them the ability to upload PDFs, give them the ability to put in information about their products.
So one last thing I will hit on for this, Joanna, is you can do all of these things to nauseam. You can have, profiles, and you can have virtual exhibit halls and all that good stuff. Essentially, you could be just spinning your wheels for something that the vendors don't even want. You need to sit them down in a room, and you need to have a heart-to-heart conversation with them about your ideas, about what it is they want. Do they want leads? Do they want brand exposure? Maybe they want to be held out as a content leader. Maybe they don't even want a booth. Maybe where they're hanging their hat is in content, curating or content creating. So you need to find out specifically what it is that the vendors want and accommodate them based on those needs. So don't be afraid to have a town hall meeting with your sponsors and say, talk to me. Like, let's get you all of the value for what you put into this thing.
And I'll tell you one thing too. So a friend of mine, the CEO who runs a medical professional society, they were looking to go from in-person to virtual, and they had 6 weeks to make it happen. One of the things that the CEO did was she called every exhibitor personally. So it wasn't like the director of meetings, which, God bless her, of course she's important, but the CEO made the time to call each exhibitor personally to say, thank you. I hope that you will continue to sponsor my event. And here are ways that we're going to make sure that this is worthwhile for you. Imagine getting a call from the CEO. How do you say no, right, to continuing to sponsor? I think she said she lost 3 exhibitors, and they were so happy to have a chance, to interact with the CEO. So give them that chance. And if you're interested in talking more about exhibits and sponsors, put it in the chat and we'll schedule another webinar. All right.
Oh, it's already a resounding yes.
Okay, yay. Okay, so Teri, I'm all about, because I've done a bunch of events. I used to organize events. I used to organize fundraising events. And I remember something that my mentor, Judith Stearns, used to say, it's all about the close. You have to end on a high note, on a magical note. So you all are probably accustomed to closing with a beautiful closing session, right? And then people walk out of there saying, well, that was amazing. So how do we have magical closes, right? Teri, you got some ideas.
So again, brainstorming with a whole bunch of people that have been to events, even just, I would encourage you to just get a round table of people from membership or people on staff, just like, how can you end this thing with an exclamation mark. Just don't just tie a bow on it. You want
And
it to
don't
be
just
something.
end with the last session.
Yeah,
right?
So think about, okay, going back to those cameos, that was a really cool, fun idea, but that's short and sweet. Like, is there a high profile closing speaker, somebody who's like super motivational? Again, you thinking a lot about these same things when you're running an in-person session. Well, think about these things when you're running, a virtual event too. Maybe you're going to show a real quotes or key takeaways from the audience. Or a real-time tag cloud. I thought that was a great idea, Joanna. What about like a non-traditional act, like bringing in an artist or bringing a musician or bringing in a comedian even? I was at a part of a virtual conference a few weeks ago where they started with a comedian, and I thought that was a great idea. Maybe a dancer or a magician or somebody
I'm all
that
about
just,
the magic.
Yeah, somebody that just kind of brings a completely different element to it. It's not for everybody, so you have to know your audience. And what I do in person at non-dues or at AMS Fest, and what I plan to do for all my events forever and ever until I die, is end with a toast, And so I think that that's just kind of a fun, unique way to bring people together. Whether you're providing the liquid for them to toast with, or whether you're asking them, giving them some time and space to go get their own beverage so you can do their toast. For Non-Dues-a-Palooza, we have happy hour sponsors, and happy hour sponsors, we're actually getting a cup made with the happy hour sponsors logos on them, and that's going to be in the goodie bag, and everybody's going to pour their beverage into the cup with those sponsored logos of the sponsors, and of course the Non-Dues-a-Palooza logo too. And we'll all toast hopefully with that cup if they, have that readily available.
Teri, I've got an idea for you. It should be one of those cups that changes color when you put in liquid. So then there's like a little bit of magic at the very end. So everyone's got a little bit of magic in their own homes.
So, what we often think is like, okay, it's over. We put a bow on it. Now we can kind of put it on the shelf, right? It's done. It's over. Okay. Speaking of happy hour, get me my own glass of wine. Well, you're not really done. When you hit the stop record button, when you say goodbye to that last attendee, or when you close the laptop, you're not really done. You still have some post-conference stuff to handle, but how can you still continue that wow effect that you've been able to give them throughout the event? And so, Joanna, I think this first part is you.
Yeah. So, I tell you, sometimes I go to these conferences, and you all probably have been there too, where you go to the conference and you think, wow, that was so awesome. Again, I want people to talk to who experience the conference with me. So there are some things that we thought about, like, how about organizing some follow-up meetings, right? So that then you can just say, if you guys want to continue the conversation, then join them. You can do them on Facebook. You can do them, you can do them over Zoom. You can do whatever. We talked about the custom video message. How about a thank you postcard with a quote or a takeaway? Organize. Teri, you've got some other ideas with the focus time and the walking groups.
So for those of you that have heard of like deep focus times, where you have chunks of time where you're focusing on a certain project, there is a Facebook group that I'm a part of who suggested that a small group of people just have a time where they do this. So they block off 2 hours, they all jump on Zoom, they say their hellos and they're, get some of that stuff out of the way, talk about what they're going to talk about. And then they hit the timer, and then they get that 20 minutes of focus time to work on whatever they're going to work on. They're just ignoring whoever's there on Zoom in the group with them. The timer goes back off. They all come back together, and they actually get to talk about the focus time that they had. And then they can restart it again, or that could be the end of the focus time. That's kind of a fun way to like continue to get people to engage with one another after the event. Another idea that was thrown out was a walking group. I have been walking in the mornings, and so I would love to just like, maybe I'm not like a power walker or anything, if it's a casual walk, I might want to throw my phone up, which I have with me anyway, and say hello to a few people and show them my view. And just might be an added way to keep people together. Back to those cohorts that we originally put together before the event. What if those cohorts continue to go on into whenever they're done talking about whatever they're talking about? They may morph into like friendships where these people are going on vacation with each other, and guess what they can all tie it back to? They can tie it back to the fact that they met each other through your event. Can you imagine what a cohort would feel after they get to meet each other in person at a real in-person event that you get to have the following year? They're gonna just be like, you want to talk about like, you know, soulmates for life or something. If these people have kind of been drugged through these months and months and months of like getting to know each other virtually, and then they have you to thank.
And I'll tell you, sometimes you have to help these cohorts self-organize, right?
Sure, of course.
So like I think about, college reunions, right? So like I was going to my whatever, I won't tell you what number, and that my college reached out to me and said, hey, will you organize a mini reunion of your dorm? And I was like, sure. And it was easy. Like all I had to do was like, send out an email, encourage a couple of folks. But I think one of the things that you want to do is make it a little bit more formal than just, hey, here are the people in your cohort. Maybe what you want to do is give it some structure and say, hey, we encourage you in the next couple of weeks, like maybe on the 17th, to get together, set aside 45 minutes. We can help you organize the meeting, or you can do it yourselves. And some people will take you up on it and some people won't. And it's interesting to see what happens. But again, you're facilitating these post-conference discussions. And I think that's even better than in person, right? Because you don't even have that often in person.
Yeah, I agree. And I like your point there of making a leader of the cohort. So that was identified earlier in my sponsorship call earlier. They're like, great, we can be a part of the cohorts, but like maybe identify a leader. So that's the person that kind of works alongside the staff to make sure things are moving along, facilitating. So this is the fun part. I can't believe we saved the best for last.
All of this is fun, Teri. What are you talking about?
It is all fun. It is all fun. I come from a family of games. Like we played tons of games growing up. I have a game closet. It's kind of ridiculous.
No, I have a game shelf, bookshelf. One thing that I'll say is Teri's events are really known for her social events. And I find that like, I don't want to miss them, right? Because they're just fun. And again, it's another way to just connect with folks. So why, some of you will say, God, my members will never go for that. I've had clients say, I don't know, maybe that all of my members will go for that, but some of them will. So why not offer it for those who will go for it? And why not offer it so that maybe those millennials, will do it? And God forbid they feel like, you're doing something for them. So create a mixer, do an after hour event. Consider the time zones, right? So maybe you start at like 7 o'clock or something. Create different rooms and let people self-select based on their interests.
So there's a really cool idea around that recently. There's an article, I need to go grab the link for you guys to read, but I think this girl had a birthday party or something. She was throwing some party and she's like, people don't just meet in a room with 40 other people and just stare at each other and talk about one thing and listen to one person talk the whole time. They break up into groups of like 2 or groups of 4, and they kind of float based on the conversation. Some people stay together the whole time. Some people break off into groups. Some people might just want to stand alone for a little while or break away for a little while and then join back in the conversation. So like you could have rooms specifically tailored to your audience. Like, let's pretend you have a mansion, was the example this girl gave. She's like, welcome to my mansion. And she had all these breakout rooms. And I think she just used Zoom. And she had a wine cellar. She said that was like the most trafficked of all the breakout rooms. She had a library. She had a bedroom. She had maybe even a bathroom or something. She had all these rooms from her mansion, the kitchen, where people would congregate, and so you could just pop in and out just like you would a normal party. So think about the way that people might want to engage in an after hours mixer or event. Think about how do they do it in real life and what they might want to experience, and virtually. So some other fun ideas, and some of these may go in the goodie box. If they all fit, my goodie box might only be like this big, and I'm going to cram it full all the fun stuff.
Well, I mean, if you think about it, right? So think about all these ideas, right? Special guests, teach them how to like taste, make, experiment, Mad Lib, scavenger hunt. You could have something that everyone participates in the scavenger hunt. Or at the end of the day, you might say, choose your own adventure.
Yes.
If you want to learn how to make pasta, go into this room. If you want to learn some magic tricks, go here. If you want a magic show, go here. If you want to do Mad Libs, go here. So all of these things, again, just kind of appeal to different people based on their tastes, but also what you're doing is you're giving people additional opportunities to interact and network, but in a more social setting. And of course, they're going to end up talking about your educational content, but they're doing something fun in addition.
So there are a couple I want to point out on this list, or like explain a little bit more. Obviously, that teach them how to like taste, make, or experiment. Like experiment might be like, you know, teach them how to draw or to paint or something along those lines. Or maybe you bring in a body language expert. So that kind of like breaches the fence of professional and personal, or maybe a self-defense person to come in and teach some basic self-defense, or like Joanna mentioned, cooking, or maybe it's even meditation. Taste something. What about whiskey, beer, wine?
I'll teach people self-defense any day.
I know you're good at that. I put that in there on purpose for you. For those of you that don't know, Joanna's a black belt. She will kick your butt. And maybe tasting chocolate. Maybe that's something that goes in the goodie box if you can ship it during the winter. Or make something like draw or paint, like I said. So Mad Libs, you could actually create Mad Libs based specifically on your event. And so you could go around and have people fill in the blank, and then you come up with this fun story. Scavenger hunt, you just give them like 10 or 15, 20 things to find around the house, and they have a certain amount of time and they have to get back and, you know, get it to you. You know, and like trivia, like we played here today, that's another fun one. And I think the Matrix team in the follow-up email for this is actually we're gonna provide you the link to the trivia, so that that you can use it as a template for your own virtual events if you thought the trivia game was a lot of fun.
Yes, we'll give you the template for trivia. We'll send it to you. But also, like, there's a woman named Deidre Daniel. I think she's on here. And my staff did the very interesting game. We split us up into 2 teams. And it was like, it was just a fun social event for my staff. And I did it last week, and then we did one just a couple days ago. And I have to say, like, it's just fun to be in an event where we were just laughing, you know. I mean, we're all so serious these days, and we're worried a lot, right? And we're just kind of stressed about like what's going to happen in the fall. And I tell you, it was just a fun hour and a half. Like here, we did this team debate, chocolate is better for humans than kissing. And I was in the, which team was I on? Oh, I was in the kissing is better, and we won. So anyway.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun.
So here's some other ideas, right? Like just.
Yes. So other ideas like improv, like maybe you play like yes and. So everybody goes around the room and you do a yes and, or you come up with a story like somebody says 3 words and the next person has to add on 3 words. Or maybe a whodunit, and this kind of ties back to the question, the idea that I had earlier, where you ask questions of the registrants, you know, and then you come up with this sort of this trivia of the people that are actually participating in the event itself. And then you learn a lot about the people that are actually right there in the room. 2 truths and a lie. We've all played that. How about event doppelgangers? I thought this was a lot of fun. Like, you know, especially if you have the entire group. I wish you all were here with us and we could see you, because I think we could easily point out like the goatees and the bald heads, right? And we'd be like, okay, he looks like him and like they're doppelgangers. And you kind of play this doppelganger game throughout the event. It's kind of fun. Or how about a guess who? And Joanna and I have a fun little surprise here for you, where you get to guess who is who. So which one, you guys have to tell us in the chat.
It's probably obvious.
Is Joanna, and which one is Teri? And then you have to say, oh my God, Teri, you had a glow up. Please just tell me. Please tell me that. Yes, y'all, that's for real me with a mullet. I'm
and
sorry.
That's really that's for real me with my jumper. Don't put it on social.
So yeah, there you go. So Joanna, I know you always love to bring home an action plan. Yeah.
So we've thrown a lot of ideas at you. For those of you who stuck with us, thank you so much. For the folks who dropped off, I hope that they'll, you know, watch the recording of the last, 15, 20 minutes of this. We always end our webinars with an action plan because we've thrown a lot of ideas at you. So what do you do? So here's my recommendation. Number 1 is create an intentional attendee journey, map it out, right? And create personas. How are they going to go from registration to your event the first day and every subsequent day? What's the experience before the event and what's the experience after the event? How will they go to your event? Do you expect them to just know? Are they going to go from an email? Are they going to go from their calendar? Map it out, right? And then say to yourself, when you create these personas, for the person who really wants to connect, what are the experiences that we think will be most meaningful for that person? How will she navigate the day? What about for the person who's all about the networking and the lead gen? How will he navigate the day? If you map it out, you'll be much more intentional about creating these experiences. The next thing that I would say is don't do nothing, do something. If you have had a plan in your brain for these virtual conferences, we hope that we've given you a few ideas to make the event magical. Pick one thing, right? My third thing is invest in speaker training, because at the end of the day, it's the speakers are going to provide a lot of the meat in your conference. And if they are not as engaging as you hope they would be, or if they maybe have some technical issues, the training should be both content as well as presentational. Invest in them so that they can continue to provide your attendees with amazing, educational experiences. And then finally, I say, if you've read the book When by Daniel Pink, he'll tell you that people remember the beginning and they remember the end most of all. So ask yourself, what wow magical thing can I give them at the beginning? And what wow magical thing can I give them at the end? It could be as simple as a really amazing quote, thanking them for attending with a toast, but it'll end on a high note. So design one magic moment at the beginning and at the end. I'm sure we're out of time for questions. So here's what we're going to do. Here's information about our product. Non-Doozapalooza, Teri, really quick, 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds.
I think I've said that word, the name of the event, enough times here, but we've got on-demand content that's already been generated. You can visit it there. And we've got more coming. Virtual Bazaar will be a live event with case studies and demos of organizations that are able to show how they're making serious bank for their association. I would love for you guys to be a part of it. I will pick a winner from those that played trivia with us that will get a free registration to this event. Lots to come. We're going to also do a fall virtual event. So lots going on there. And thanks everybody for hanging in with us.
Yeah.
What a crowd.
So we're going to do another webinar on sponsors. Teri and I are actually doing yet another webinar on July 21st on the 5 ways to foolproof your AMS against tech debt. Tech debt is the stuff that didn't get done. Tech debt is the stuff that needs to be fixed. Tech debt is the stuff that doesn't work the way you need it to. Tech debt is the upgrade that couldn't get done. So join us for that. So I would love to have conversations with you all, and so would Teri, about how to make your virtual meetings magical. We don't just provide a platform, we provide a whole team that will help you design an amazing experience. So if you're looking for some solutions, we hope you'll be in touch. And we are so grateful to you all for joining us today.
So Joanna, can I leave us with a quote from Walt Disney?
Please.
Keep moving forward, opening new doors, and doing new things. That's the underline there, because we're curious, and curiosity keeps leading us down new paths. Thanks, Walt Disney, for that. Thanks everybody for being here.
Thanks everybody. Bye. Thanks for sticking with us.